Educate your mind to kill weak habits. Human life is shaped by daily actions. Every action repeated again and again slowly becomes a habit. Habits quietly build the direction of a person's future. Some habits create growth, strength, discipline, and success. Other habits create delay, weakness, fear, and failure. Most people believe success depends on luck, money, education, or connections. But the deeper truth is different. Success or failure grows from habits that control everyday life. Weak habits are dangerous because they appear small and harmless. A few minutes of delay, a little laziness, a little distraction. These things seem unimportant in the beginning. But when they repeat every day, they slowly weaken the mind. A person with big dreams may still remain stuck in the same place for years. Not because the dream is impossible, but because weak habits silently control the mind. The mind is the command center of human life. Every decision, every action, and every reaction begins inside the mind. If the mind is trained, a person becomes powerful. If the mind is uncontrolled, weak habits begin to rule life. Education of the mind is therefore one of the most important journeys a person can take. True education is not only learning facts or passing exams. True education is learning how to think, how to choose, and how to control behavior. When a person learns to guide the mind, a person begins to guide life. Weak habits cannot survive in a trained mind. A trained mind sees distractions clearly. A trained mind understands discipline. A trained mind chooses progress over comfort. Throughout history, many successful individuals were not born extraordinary. They simply learned to remove weak habits and replace them with strong patterns of action. Athletes wake early and train their bodies. Writers discipline themselves to write every day. Entrepreneurs continue working even when results are slow. Their strength does not come from talent alone. Their strength grows from habits that support their goals. Every person carries two possibilities inside. One possibility moves toward comfort, delay, and excuses. The other possibility moves toward discipline, growth, and achievement. The direction depends on which habits are allowed to grow. This book explores the process of educating the mind so weak habits lose their power. It explains how habits are formed, how they grow, and how they can be replaced with stronger actions. Through examples and simple ideas, the reader will discover how small daily choices create powerful change. The journey will show that weakness is not permanent. Laziness is not identity. Discipline is not limited to a few people. The mind can be trained. Habits can be rebuilt. Life direction can be changed. A person who learns to educate the mind becomes the architect of personal success. When weak habits disappear, the mind becomes clear, strong, and focused. From that moment, the path toward achievement becomes possible. The journey begins with a simple decision. The decision to take control of the mind and remove the habits that weaken human potential. That decision is the first step toward a stronger life and a stronger future. Chapter 1. The silent war inside the mind. Every human life is guided by an invisible force. This force is the mind. The mind is the place where thoughts are created, decisions are formed, and actions begin. Many people believe that success or failure comes from the outside world. They believe circumstances control everything. They blame luck, society, family, or environment. But the deeper reality is different. The real battle of success and failure begins inside the mind. Inside every person, there is a silent war. A war between strength and weakness. A war between discipline and comfort. A war between action and delay. This war is not loud. It does not create noise that the world can hear. It happens quietly during daily choices. A person with a mind presents two voices. One voice says, rise early, begin work, move toward your goal. The second voice says, rest longer, delay the work, there is still time. This small moment becomes the battlefield. Many people lose this battle again and again, not because they are weak as individuals, but because weak habits slowly train the mind to choose comfort. Weak habits are like invisible chains. They do not appear suddenly. They grow slowly through repeated behavior. When a person delays work today, it seems small. When the same delay repeats tomorrow, it still looks harmless. But when this pattern continues for months or years, the habit becomes powerful. The mind begins to accept delay as normal behavior. At that moment, the person may still dream about success, but daily actions move in the opposite direction. This is why many people feel frustrated with their own lives. They want progress. They imagine a better future, but their habits quietly push them backward. Consider the story of a young student named Hamza. Hamza dreams of becoming a successful engineer. He admires great inventions and hopes to build a strong career. At the beginning of the school year, he feels excited. He buys new notebooks. He promises himself that he will study every day. For the first week he works hard. But soon a small habit appears. One evening he feels tired and decides to skip studying. He tells himself tomorrow will be better. The next day he spends time watching videos on his phone. Again he promises to study later. Days slowly pass. His books remain on the table, but his attention moves toward entertainment. The problem is not intelligence. Hamza is a capable student. The real problem is a weak habit that begins to control. Every day the habit grows stronger. After some months, Hamza feels worried about his exams. He suddenly tries to study everything at once. The pressure becomes heavy. His mind becomes stressed. The situation that could have been simple slowly becomes difficult. This story is common in many lives. Weak habits do not attack loudly. They enter quietly and slowly occupy the mind. Another example can be seen in the life of a young office worker named Ali. Ali begins a new job with great enthusiasm. On the first day, he arrives early. He organizes his desk and works carefully. His manager notices his energy. But after some weeks, Ali begins to relax his discipline. One morning he wakes up late. He rushes to work and arrives a little late. Nothing serious happens. The manager does not complain. Ali feels safe. Soon he repeats the same behavior. Late arrival becomes easier each day. After some time, the habit becomes normal. Ali is no longer the energetic worker he was. The change happens slowly, not because Ali lost his ability, but because a weak habit quietly entered his routine. The silent war inside the mind always works in this way. Small choices repeated many times become powerful patterns. The mind learns from repetition. If a person repeats laziness, the mind learns laziness. If a person repeats discipline, the mind learns discipline. This idea reveals an important truth. Weak habits are not permanent enemies. They are learned behaviors. And anything learned can also be unlearned. The moment a person understands this truth, a new possibility appears. The person begins to see that life direction can change. But before change can begin, the person must develop awareness. Awareness means seeing habits clearly without excuses. Many people protect their weak habits with justifications. They say everyone does this. They say life is stressful. They say there is no time. These explanations protect the habit, but they destroy progress. A person who truly wants growth must become honest with the self. The person must observe daily actions carefully. How much time is spent learning? How much time is lost in distraction? How often promises are broken? How often discipline is avoided? This observation is not meant to create guilt. Its purpose is to create understanding. Once the truth becomes visible, the person gains power to change. Imagine a gardener who ignores the garden for many months. During that time, weeds begin to grow everywhere. The gardener might complain about the weeds, but complaining does not remove them. The gardener must first look carefully at the garden. Only then can the weeds be removed. The mind works in the same way. Weak habits are like weeds. They grow automatically when attention disappears. But once a person becomes aware, the process of cleaning the garden can begin. Awareness is therefore the first weapon in the battle against weak habits. It allows a person to recognize the silent patterns that shape life. Many successful individuals develop this awareness early in their journey. They observed their behaviors and noticed which actions created progress and which actions created delay. They did not wait for perfect motivation. Instead, they began correcting small behaviors. This slow correction created powerful transformation over time. The silent war inside the mind never truly disappears. Even strong individuals face moments of temptation. The difference is that a trained mind recognizes these moments quickly. A trained mind chooses discipline more often than comfort. This ability grows through practice. Each time a person chooses the stronger action, the mind becomes slightly more powerful. Each time a person resists distraction, the habit of focus becomes stronger. Over weeks, months, and years, this training builds a strong character. The person becomes someone who acts with intention instead of reacting to impulses. The silent war inside the mind, therefore, becomes the most important battle of human life. Winning this battle does not require extraordinary talent. It requires awareness, patience, and daily effort. A person who learns to guide the mind learns to guide destiny. When weak habits lose their power, the path toward achievement becomes clear. This understanding marks the beginning of a powerful journey. The journey of educating the mind and building a life guided by strength instead of weakness. Chapter 2. Understanding how weak habits are born. Every habit begins with a simple action. No habit appears suddenly as a strong force. Instead, habits grow slowly through repetition. A person performs an action once. The mind records the experience. If the action brings comfort, pleasure, or relief, the brain remembers it. Later, the mind suggests repeating the same action again. This is the beginning of a habit. The human brain naturally searches for the easiest path. It prefers actions that require less effort and give quick satisfaction. Because of this tendency, weak habits often grow faster than strong habits. Strong habits usually require effort, discipline, patience, and time. Weak habits usually offer immediate comfort. For example, watching entertainment feels easy. Studying deeply requires focus and effort. Scrolling through a phone feels relaxing. Learning a new skill requires concentration. Because the brain prefers comfort, it easily repeats the easier choice. But repetition slowly transforms small choices into powerful habits. To understand this process more clearly, it is useful to look at the stages through which habits are formed. The first stage is the trigger. A trigger is a situation, emotion, or environment that begins the action. A person may feel bored. The phone becomes the trigger for distraction. A person may feel stress. Food may become the trigger for comfort. A person may feel tired. Sleep or delay may become the trigger for avoiding work. The second stage is the action. The person performs the behavior that the mind suggests. If the behavior creates relief or pleasure, the brain records the experience. The third stage is repetition. When the same trigger appears again, the mind suggests the same action. If the person repeats the action several times, the brain strengthens the connection. After many repetitions, the behavior becomes automatic. At this stage, the person may not even think consciously before performing the action. The habit begins to control the response. Consider the example of a young man named Bilal. Bilal starts a new semester at university. At the beginning, he plans to study every evening. During the first week, he follows. One evening, he feels bored after studying for a short time. He opens a social media application on his phone. The videos are entertaining. They make him laugh and forget the stress of studying. His brain receives a signal of pleasure. The next evening, the same feeling of boredom appears. The mind remembers the earlier experience. Without much thought, Bilal opens the same application again. This behavior repeats every evening. Soon the pattern becomes automatic. Whenever Bilal sits down to study, his mind quickly suggests entertainment. The habit has been created. The important point here is that the habit did not begin as a strong force. It began as a small decision repeated many times. Another example can be seen in the life of a young employee named Sarah. Sarah works in an office where tasks must be completed before the end of each day. At the beginning, she finishes tasks early and feels satisfied. But one day she delays an important task. She decides to complete it later. Later, she manages to finish the work quickly before the deadline. The brain learns a dangerous lesson. Delay did not create immediate consequences. The next day, she repeats the delay. Gradually, procrastination becomes a habit. Sarah still completes her tasks, but she always waits until the last moment. This habit increases stress and reduces the quality of her work. The pattern continues until she recognizes the problem. These examples show how weak habits quietly grow in daily life. Many people believe habits are created by personality. They say some people are naturally disciplined and others are naturally lazy. But modern understanding of behavior shows that habits are largely learned through repetition. The brain simply adapts to repeated actions. If a person repeats discipline, the brain becomes comfortable with discipline. If a person repeats laziness, the brain becomes comfortable with laziness. This means that habits are not permanent identities. They are learned patterns, and learned patterns can be changed. However, change requires awareness and patience. Many people try to destroy a habit by force. They promise themselves that they will stop immediately. For a few days they succeed. But soon the old pattern returns. This happens because the root of the habit has not been understood. A habit grows within a system of triggers, environment, and emotions. To remove the habit, a person must understand this system. For example, if distraction happens mostly during boredom, the person must create a new activity during that moment. If unhealthy eating happens during stress, the person must learn a healthier way to respond to stress. Replacing the response is more effective than simply resisting it. Another important factor in habit formation is environment. The environment often shapes behavior more strongly than motivation. Imagine a person trying to avoid unhealthy food while the table is full of snacks. The constant visual reminder makes the habit stronger. But if the same person changes the environment and removes those snacks, the habit becomes easier to control. Environment acts like silent guidance for behavior. Successful individuals often design environments that support strong habits. A writer places books and notebooks near the working desk. An athlete keeps training equipment ready and visible. A student studies in a quiet place without distractions. These small environmental choices reduce the power of weak habits. Another important element is emotional reward. Every habit survives because it provides some form of reward. The reward may be relaxation, pleasure, comfort, or escape from difficulty. If a person removes the habit but does not create a new reward, the brain continues searching for the old one. This is why replacement habits are important. For example, a person who replaces evening television with evening exercise may experience a new reward. Exercise creates energy, confidence, and improved health. Over time, the brain begins to associate the new action with positive feelings. The old habit slowly loses its attraction. Understanding how weak habits are born gives a person a powerful advantage. Instead of fighting blindly, the person begins to observe patterns. The person studies triggers, environments, and emotions. This knowledge transforms the process of change. Weak habits no longer appear mysterious or uncontrollable. They become understandable systems that can be redesigned. The moment a person realizes that habits grow through repetition, a new sense of responsibility appears. Every small action becomes important. Every choice becomes a seed planted in the garden of the mind. Some seeds grow into strong trees of discipline and productivity. Other seeds grow into weeds of laziness and distraction. The difference depends on what actions are repeated daily. The mind always learns from repetition. Therefore, the path to change begins with choosing new actions again and again. Through consistent repetition, the mind slowly learns a new pattern, and the habits that once created weakness begin to lose their power. Chapter 3. Education of the Mind. The human mind is powerful, but it is not automatically disciplined. Just like the body becomes strong through training, the mind becomes strong through education and practice. Many people spend years educating themselves in schools and universities. They learn mathematics, science, languages, and many other subjects. But very few people receive training on how to educate the mind itself. Without this training, the mind easily becomes controlled by emotions, impulses, and weak habits. Education of the mind means learning how to guide thoughts, control reactions, and direct actions toward meaningful goals. It means becoming the master of personal behavior, instead of becoming the servant of temporary feelings. When the mind is untrained, it behaves like a restless animal. It runs toward comfort. It escapes difficulty. It avoids effort. But when the mind is educated, it begins to follow direction. The person becomes capable of choosing long-term success over short-term pleasure. This transformation does not happen suddenly. It grows slowly through repeated mental training. To understand this idea, more clearly consider the story of a young woman named Aisha. Aisha wanted to build a habit of reading books because she believed reading would improve her knowledge and thinking. In the beginning, she felt excited. She bought several books and promised herself she would read every day. But after a few days, the excitement disappeared. Whenever she tried to read, her mind began searching for easier entertainment. Her phone offered endless videos and messages. Watching them felt easier than reading. Soon reading became rare, and the books remained untouched. One evening, Aisha decided to think deeply about the situation. She realized that the real problem was not lack of interest in knowledge. The real problem was that her mind had been trained for instant entertainment. Her brain had learned to expect quick stimulation. Reading required patience and concentration. Instead of blaming herself, she decided to educate her mind step by step. She made a simple rule. Every evening she would read for 15 minutes. The time was small, but the rule was strict. During the first week, her mind complained. It tried to create excuses. It suggested opening the phone. It suggested delaying the reading. But Aisha continued following the rule. After some weeks, something interesting happened. Her mind began accepting the reading time as a normal part. The resistance slowly disappeared. Later, she increased the reading time to 30 minutes. After several months, reading had become a natural habit. This example shows the real meaning of mind education. Education does not mean forcing the mind through sudden extreme discipline. Education means guiding the mind through consistent practice. The brain learns from repetition, just like muscles learn from exercise. Another important part of mind education is awareness of thoughts. Many people allow thoughts to control emotions and actions without questioning them. A negative thought may appear, and the person immediately believes it. For example, a student preparing for an exam might think, I cannot succeed. This subject is too difficult. If the student accepts this thought, as truth, motivation disappears. But an educated mind observes the thought carefully. It asks questions. Is this thought helping progress? If the answer is no, the mind learns to replace the thought with a more constructive one. The student may instead say, "This subject is challenging, but I can improve through practice." This small shift changes the direction of effort. Mind education, therefore, includes the ability to observe and guide thoughts. Another powerful technique in educating the mind is building routines. The human brain loves patterns. When actions happen at the same time, each day the brain begins to expect them. This reduces resistance and makes discipline easier. Consider the example of a young professional named Imran. Imran wanted to improve his productivity at work. He noticed that many hours of his day disappeared in random tasks and distractions. He decided to create a structured morning routine. Every morning he arrived at the office and spent the first hour working on the most important project. No messages. No unnecessary conversations. Only focused work. At first, this routine felt difficult. But after repeating the pattern for several weeks, the brain began to accept it as normal. Soon the first hour of focused work became the most productive part of his day. This example shows how routines educate the mind. When the brain expects a certain action at a certain time, discipline becomes easier. Environment also plays a role in mind education. A person surrounded by distractions will struggle to maintain focus. But a person who creates a supportive environment strengthens the ability to concentrate. For example, a student who studies in a quiet room without unnecessary devices trains the mind for deeper focus. A writer who sits at the same desk each day signals to the brain that it is time for creative work. Environment silently teaches the mind what behavior is expected. Another important aspect of mind education is patience. Many people expect instant transformation. They want to change habits immediately and permanently. When progress feels slow, they become discouraged. But the mind changes gradually. Just like learning a new language requires time, learning discipline requires repeated effort. Every small victory becomes part of the training process. Waking early one day, completing a difficult task, resisting. These small successes teach the brain a new pattern. Over time, the collection of small victories builds a powerful mindset. Education of the mind also requires self-respect. A person must believe that personal improvement is possible. If someone constantly repeats the idea that change is impossible, the mind accepts this belief and stops. But when a person believes that growth is possible, the mind becomes open to learning. This belief does not require arrogance. It requires quiet confidence in the ability to improve through effort. Throughout history, many individuals achieved great things not because they were born with extraordinary talent, but because they trained their minds with discipline and persistence. They understood that the mind could be shaped through practice. They repeated positive behaviors until those behaviors became natural. The same process is available to every person. No one is permanently trapped by weak habits. The mind is flexible and capable of learning new patterns at any stage of life. Education of the mind is therefore a powerful journey. It transforms ordinary effort into lasting strength. It replaces automatic weakness with intentional action. When the mind becomes educated, the person begins to experience a new level of control over life. Decisions become clearer. Focus becomes stronger. Goals become more achievable. Weak habits slowly lose their influence because the trained mind recognizes their danger. The person becomes capable of choosing discipline even when comfort appears tempting. This ability does not eliminate difficulty from life, but it provides the strength needed to face challenges with determination. Through consistent practice, the educated mind becomes the foundation of lasting success. And the individual who once struggled with weak habits begins to build a life guided by strength, purpose, and self-control. Chapter 4. Breaking the Power of Comfort. One of the strongest reasons weak habits survive is the human love for comfort. Comfort feels safe, easy, and pleasant. The body relaxes and the mind avoids effort. In small amounts, comfort is healthy because the body needs rest. But when comfort becomes the main goal of life, it slowly weakens the mind. A person who always chooses comfort begins to avoid challenges. Difficult work feels heavy. Discipline feels painful. Growth feels slow. Because of this, many people remain trapped in weak habits without realizing the real cause. The real cause is not lack of ability. The real cause is the addiction to comfort. Comfort addiction happens when the brain becomes used to easy pleasure again and again. Modern life makes this addiction even stronger. Entertainment is always available. Food can be ordered instantly. Information appears with a single touch on a screen. These conveniences are useful, but they also train the brain to expect constant ease. When something requires patience or effort, the mind immediately resists. A student may open a book and after a few minutes feel the desire to check messages. A worker may begin an important project, but soon search for easier tasks. The brain is simply following the pattern it has learned. To kill weak habits, a person must break this automatic attachment to comfort. Breaking comfort addiction does not mean living with unnecessary suffering. It means learning to accept small, controlled discomfort in order to build strength. Just like muscles grow stronger through exercise, the mind grows stronger through challenge. Consider the example of a young man named Farhan. Farhan wanted to improve his physical health. For many years, he lived a very comfortable routine. He slept late. He avoided physical activity. He spent most of his free time watching shows and using his phone. Deep inside, he knew his lifestyle was unhealthy, but the comfort was difficult to leave. One day, he decided to make a simple change. He would wake up 30 minutes earlier each morning and walk outside. The first morning felt difficult. The bed felt warm and the outside air felt cold. His mind suggested skipping the walk and sleeping longer. But Farhan reminded himself that growth begins with small discipline. He left the bed and walked slowly through the quiet streets. The first week was uncomfortable. His body felt tired and his mind kept searching for excuses, but he continued the routine. After several weeks, something interesting happened. The morning walk no longer felt like punishment. Instead, it began to feel refreshing. His body felt more energetic during the day. His mood improved and his thinking became clearer. The small daily discomfort had created a powerful positive change. This example shows how controlled challenge educates the mind. When a person voluntarily accepts effort, the brain learns a new lesson. The lesson says effort is not danger. Effort is growth. Another example can be seen in the life of a student named Sana. Sana had a habit of delaying difficult subjects. Whenever she faced a challenging topic, she quickly switched to easier activities. This behavior gave temporary relief, but it created long-term stress. One evening, she decided to face the discomfort directly. She chose the most difficult subject and studied it for a fixed period of time. The first session felt slow and confusing. Her mind wanted to escape, but she continued reading and solving problems. When the session ended, she realized something important. The subject was not impossible. It only required patience. By facing the discomfort, she had broken the illusion that difficulty must be avoided. From that day, she repeated the same approach. Gradually, the difficult subject became manageable. Her confidence increased, and the habit of avoidance began to disappear. These stories reveal an important truth. Comfort often hides the door to growth. When a person constantly escapes discomfort, the mind becomes fragile. But when a person practices facing small challenges, the mind becomes resilient. Resilience means the ability to continue working, even when conditions are not perfect. Life will always present obstacles. Unexpected problems, delays, and pressures are natural parts of the human journey. A person who depends completely on comfort will struggle during these moments. But a person who has trained the mind through controlled challenges will remain calm and focused. One simple way to build this strength is through daily discipline. Waking up at a consistent time, completing important tasks before entertainment, practicing physical activity, reading and learning regularly. These actions may feel slightly uncomfortable in the beginning, but each repetition strengthens the mind. Another useful strategy is limiting unnecessary distractions. For example, a person may decide to keep the phone away during focused work time. At first, the mind may feel restless, but after several days, the brain adjusts and concentration becomes easier. This small act of discipline weakens the habit of constant distraction. Comfort addiction also appears in emotional behavior. Sometimes people avoid honest conversations because they feel uncomfortable. Sometimes they avoid admitting mistakes because it feels embarrassing. But facing these uncomfortable moments builds emotional maturity. A person who learns to accept responsibility and communicate honestly develops stronger relationships and stronger character. Breaking the power of comfort therefore influences every part of life. It improves health, productivity, learning, and emotional strength. The process does not require extreme sacrifice. It requires steady willingness to step slightly outside the comfort zone. Every day a person can ask a simple question. What small challenge can I face today? It may be finishing a difficult task, learning something new, exercising the body, or resisting a distraction. Each small victory teaches the mind that discomfort is temporary and growth is possible. Over time, the brain begins to welcome effort instead of fearing it. This transformation is powerful. A person who once avoided challenges begins to seek opportunities for improvement. The mind becomes active, curious, and disciplined. Weak habits lose their power because the person no longer runs toward constant comfort. Instead, the person moves toward purposeful effort. Breaking the power of comfort is therefore a crucial step in educating the mind. It turns ordinary discipline into a daily practice. And through this practice, the individual becomes stronger, more focused, and more capable of achieving meaningful goals. Chapter 5. Replacing weak habits with strong habits. When a person decides to remove weak habits, the first instinct is often to stop the behavior immediately. The person promises to never repeat the habit again. For a short time, this decision may work. But after some days, the old behavior often returns. This happens because habits cannot simply disappear. The mind does not like emptiness. If a behavior is removed, the brain begins searching for something to replace it. If a strong replacement is not created, the old habit slowly returns. For this reason, the most effective way to destroy weak habits is to replace them with stronger habits. Replacement changes the direction of behavior instead of leaving a gap. The mind still performs an action, but the action now supports growth instead of weakness. Consider the story of a young woman named Aisha. Aisha had a habit of spending several hours each night scrolling through social media. At first, it felt relaxing. It helped her escape stress after all. But over time, she noticed that this habit was stealing her time. She slept late. She woke up tired. Important personal goals remained unfinished. One evening she decided to stop the habit. She placed her phone away and promised not to use it at night. For a few days, the plan worked, but soon boredom appeared. Without the phone, she did not know what to do with her free time. The mind began suggesting the old habit again. Eventually, she returned to the same pattern. Later, Aisha realized that stopping the habit was not enough. She needed a better replacement. She created a new evening routine. Instead of opening social media, she began writing in a personal journal. After writing, she read several pages from a book. At first, the new routine felt, but she repeated it every night. After some weeks, something interesting happened. Her mind began expecting the new activities. The desire to check social media slowly became weaker. Her sleep improved, and she felt more peaceful before going to bed. The new habits had replaced the old one. This example shows an important principle. Weak habits lose their power when stronger habits occupy the same time and space. Another example can be seen in the life of a young office worker named Imran. Imran often felt tired during the afternoon at work. To deal with the fatigue, he developed a habit of drinking sugary drinks and eating. The sugar gave temporary energy, but later his body felt even more tired. He wanted to stop this habit, but each afternoon the craving returned. Instead of simply resisting the craving, he created a new habit. Whenever the afternoon fatigue appeared, he took a short walk outside the office building. He also drank water instead of sugary drinks. The first few days were difficult because the body expected sugar. But the short walk refreshed his mind and improved blood circulation. After several weeks, the craving for snacks became weaker. The body began to enjoy the fresh air and movement. The weak habit had been replaced with a healthier one. This process works because the brain loves patterns. If a new pattern is repeated enough times, the brain slowly accepts it as normal behavior. Another important step in replacing habits is starting with small actions. Many people fail because they try to create large, dramatic changes immediately. For example, a person who never exercises may suddenly decide to train for 2 hours every day. This plan feels exciting at first, but quickly becomes exhausting. The mind begins to resist, and the habit disappears. Small habits are more powerful because they are easier to repeat. A person who begins with 10 minutes of exercise each day is more likely to continue. A person who reads 10 pages of a book each night slowly builds a strong reading habit. Small actions repeated consistently create lasting change. Another helpful strategy is connecting a new habit to an existing routine. The brain already understands the existing routine, so the new habit becomes easier to remember. For example, a person who wants to practice gratitude may write 3 positive thoughts each morning after brushing teeth. A student who wants to review lessons daily may spend 15 minutes studying immediately after dinner. By attaching the new habit to a familiar activity, the brain learns the pattern more quickly. Environment also plays a role in replacing habits. If the environment supports the new behavior, the habit grows stronger. For example, a person who wants to read more books can place a book on the desk or beside the bed. Seeing the book acts as a reminder. A person who wants to exercise regularly, the visible object encourages action. Small environmental changes guide behavior without requiring constant willpower. Reward is another powerful factor. When the brain receives a positive feeling after a new habit, it becomes more willing to repeat the behavior. The reward does not need to be large. Sometimes the reward is simply the satisfaction of completing the action. A student who finishes a study session may feel proud of the progress. An athlete who completes daily training may feel stronger and more confident. These positive emotions strengthen the habit. Over time, the habit itself becomes the reward. The person begins to enjoy the activity that once felt difficult. Replacing weak habits also requires patience. The brain may still remember the old behavior for some time. Occasional mistakes may happen, but mistakes do not mean failure. They simply remind the person to return to the new pattern. Consistency over long periods creates lasting change. The goal is not perfection. The goal is progress. Each day the new habit becomes slightly stronger. Each repetition builds a new identity. A person who once believed I am lazy begins to say I am disciplined. A person who once avoided learning begins to say I enjoy growing and improving. This identity shift is powerful because behavior follows self-belief. When the mind accepts the identity of a disciplined person, the new habits become natural. Weak habits lose their place because they no longer match the new identity. Replacing weak habits with strong habits, therefore, becomes one of the most important steps in education. It transforms empty time into productive action. It transforms distraction into focus. And through steady repetition, it turns small daily choices into a strong foundation for long-term success. When a person fills life with strong habits, weakness slowly fades away, and the path toward growth becomes clear and achievable. Chapter 6. Building the identity of a strong mind. Habits shape behavior, but identity shapes habits. The way a person sees the self influences every action that follows. If someone believes I am lazy, the mind accepts laziness as normal behavior. If someone believes I am disciplined, the mind begins to search for disciplined actions. Identity, therefore, becomes the foundation of lasting habit change. Many people try to change their habits without changing the way they see themselves. They attempt to force new behaviors while still believing the old story about who they are. This conflict makes progress difficult. True transformation begins when a person builds the identity of a strong mind. A strong mind does not appear suddenly. It develops through repeated evidence. Every small action becomes proof that the new identity is real. Consider the example of a young student named Hassan. For many years, Hassan believed he was not good at studying. Whenever exams approached, he felt nervous and doubtful. He often said to himself that he was not a serious learner. Because of this belief, he avoided long study sessions. He delayed preparation and depended on last-minute effort. One day a teacher gave him simple advice. Instead of thinking about the final exam, think about becoming the type of person who studies daily. This idea changed Hassan's thinking. He stopped focusing only on grades and started focusing on daily behavior. Every evening he studied for a fixed period of time. At first the sessions were short. Sometimes he studied only 20 minutes. But he repeated the action every day. After several weeks, he began to notice something interesting. His confidence was increasing. He started saying to himself, I am becoming a consistent student. The identity slowly changed. Months later, studying no longer felt it had become part of who he was. His exam results improved naturally because his habits had improved. This story shows how identity grows from repeated behavior. A person does not become disciplined by simply saying the words. The identity must be supported by action. Every time a person completes a positive habit, the mind receives evidence. The evidence says this is the type of person you are becoming. Another example can be seen in the life of a young professional named Sarah. Sarah once believed she was not a productive worker. She often felt overwhelmed by tasks and spent time switching between activities without finishing them. Her confidence at work slowly decreased. One day she decided to change her approach. Instead of worrying about the entire workload, she focused on completing one important task each morning. When she arrived at the office, she spent the first hour working with full concentration on the most valuable project. When the task was completed, she felt a sense of achievement. The next day, she repeated the same process. Over time, these small daily victories created a new belief. She began to say, I am someone who finishes important work. This identity changed her attitude toward productivity. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, she felt capable and organized. Her habits improved because her self-image had improved. Building the identity of a strong mind also requires choosing words carefully. The language a person uses while speaking to the self has powerful influence. Negative self-talk weakens motivation. For example, saying, "I always fail," or "I cannot control my habits," creates mental barriers. A stronger approach is to focus on growth. A person might say, "I am learning discipline. I am improving each day. I am becoming more focused." These statements guide the mind toward possibility instead of limitation. Another important element of strong identity is responsibility. A strong-minded person accepts responsibility for actions and choices. This does not mean blaming oneself for every difficulty in life. Many challenges are influenced by circumstances. But a responsible person always asks an important question. What action can I take to improve this situation? This question transforms the mind from passive thinking to active problem solving. Consider the story of a young entrepreneur named Bilal. Bilal started a small business with great enthusiasm. In the beginning, he faced several setbacks. Customers were few and financial pressure increased. For a short time, he felt discouraged and thought about giving up. But then he reminded himself of the identity he wanted to build. He wanted to become someone who persists through challenges. Instead of quitting, he studied his mistakes and adjusted his strategy. He improved his product and communicated better with customers. Slowly the business began to grow. The difficulties had not disappeared, but his mindset had changed. His identity as a determined person guided his actions. Strong identity also grows through discipline during difficult moments. Anyone can act with motivation when conditions are easy. But real strength appears when motivation disappears and discipline continues. For example, an athlete may feel tired after a long day. Skipping training would feel comfortable. But completing the training session strengthens the identity of dedication. Each time a person acts according to values rather than temporary feelings, the strong identity becomes deeper. Environment can also support this process. Being surrounded by people who value growth, discipline, and learning encourage positive identity development. Conversations, ideas, and shared goals reinforce the belief that improvement is possible. On the other hand, environments that constantly promote laziness, negativity, or distraction make identity change more difficult. Choosing supportive influences, therefore, becomes an important part of mind education. Reading inspiring stories, learning from mentors, and observing disciplined individuals can strengthen the vision of who a person wants to become. Over time, the new identity becomes natural. The person no longer needs constant motivation. Habits align automatically with the self-image. A disciplined person wakes up early, because that is what disciplined people do. A focused learner studies regularly, because that is part of the identity. Weak habits lose their attraction because they no longer match the story the person believes about the self. This transformation is one of the most powerful achievements in personal development. It shows that the mind can be reshaped through conscious effort. Identity is not fixed at birth. It evolves through daily choices. Every action sends a message to the mind about who you are becoming. When those messages consistently reflect discipline, courage, and responsibility, the identity of a strong mind is formed. And once that identity becomes stable, weak habits no longer have the power to control behavior. The person begins living according to purpose, values, and self-respect. This is the moment when true mental strength appears, and the journey toward lasting success becomes possible. Chapter 7. The Long Road of Mastery. The journey of educating the mind and killing weak habits is not a short journey. It is a long road that requires patience, commitment, and continuous effort. Many people begin the journey with excitement. They feel motivated and ready to change their lives. For the first few days or weeks, their discipline feels strong. They follow routines and resist distractions. But after some time, the excitement begins to fade. Life becomes busy. Challenges appear, energy decreases. At this moment, many people feel discouraged. They believe the change is too difficult. They believe they have failed. But the truth is different. The struggle is not a sign of failure. It is a natural part of mastery. Every person who has achieved something meaningful has faced moments of difficulty. Mastery grows through persistence during these moments. Consider the example of a young man named Imran. Imran wanted to build a habit of waking up early each morning. He believed that early mornings would give him quiet time to study and plan his day. For the first few days he succeeded. He woke up early and felt proud of his discipline. But after 1 week he missed a morning. He slept longer than planned. Instead of waking up, he turned off the alarm and stayed in bed. Later he felt disappointed. He believed the habit had been broken. For several days he returned to his old routine. Then he began to think carefully about what had happened. He realized the problem was not simply waking up early. The real problem was his late-night routine. Each night he stayed awake using his phone and watching videos. Because he slept late, waking up early became difficult. Once he understood this pattern, he decided to change the system. He created a new evening routine. He turned off his phone earlier. He prepared for sleep calmly. He went to bed at a consistent time. After making this change, waking up early became easier. This example shows an important lesson. Sometimes weak habits are connected to other hidden behaviors. When a person studies the system carefully, solutions become clearer. Mastery requires learning from mistakes instead of fearing them. Failure often provides valuable information. It reveals triggers, environments, and patterns that need improvement. Another example can be seen in the life of a student named Aisha. Aisha wanted to build a strong study routine. At the beginning, she planned to study several hours, but after a few weeks, she noticed that some days were productive, while other days were filled with distractions. Instead of giving up, she began observing her habits carefully. She noticed that her most productive time was in the morning. In the evening, her energy was lower and distractions increased. After discovering this pattern, she reorganized her schedule. She studied difficult subjects in the morning. She used the evening for lighter tasks, such as reviewing notes or reading. This adjustment improved her consistency. Her results slowly became stronger. The lesson from her story is simple. Mastery grows when a person observes and improves the process. It is not necessary to be perfect every day. The important thing is to continue learning and adjusting. The long road of mastery also requires patience. Many people expect quick results. They want to see dramatic changes within a short time. But real transformation develops slowly. Just like a tree grows gradually, habits grow through repeated practice. A person who exercises for 1 week will not immediately see major physical change. But months of consistent training create strength and endurance. The same principle applies to mental discipline. Each small effort strengthens the mind. Each repeated habit builds stability. Over time, these small improvements accumulate into powerful results. Another important element of mastery is resilience. Resilience means the ability to continue moving forward despite obstacles. Life will always contain challenges. Unexpected problems, financial pressures, health issues, or emotional struggles may appear. A resilient mind does not surrender to these difficulties. Instead, it searches for solutions and continues progressing step by step. Consider the example of a young entrepreneur named Farhan. Farhan started a small business with enthusiasm. In the early months, progress was slow. Customers were few, and financial stress increased. At times he felt tempted to abandon the project. But he reminded himself why he had started the journey. He studied his mistakes, improved his marketing, and listened to customer feedback. Slowly the business began to grow. The early struggles became lessons that the road to mastery also requires self-compassion. This means treating oneself with understanding during difficult moments. Many people become harsh critics of their own mistakes. They believe that failure means they are weak or incapable. But this negative thinking only damages motivation. A healthier approach is to accept mistakes as part of learning. A person can say to the self, "I made an error, but I can improve." This attitude keeps the mind open to growth. Another helpful strategy during the journey is celebrating small victories. Every completed task, every day of discipline, and every moment of progress deserves recognition. These small celebrations remind the mind that effort creates positive results. They strengthen motivation and build confidence. Support from others can also help during the long road of mastery. Friends, mentors, and family members who encourage growth provide valuable energy. Sharing goals with supportive people creates accountability. When others believe in our potential, it becomes easier to believe in ourselves. However, the most important support must come from within. A person must develop the inner voice that encourages persistence. This voice reminds the mind that progress takes time. It reminds the person that every step forward matters. Over months and years, the person begins to notice a powerful transformation. Habits that once felt difficult become natural. Discipline becomes automatic. Focus becomes stronger. Weak habits slowly disappear because they are no longer practiced. The mind becomes organized, determined, and resilient. The long road of mastery, therefore, becomes a journey of self-discovery. Along the way, a person learns patience, courage, responsibility, and self-control. Each challenge becomes a lesson. Each effort becomes a step toward personal strength. Eventually, the person who once struggled with weak habits becomes someone capable of guiding life with confidence and clarity. This transformation proves an important truth. Great change does not come from a single moment of motivation. It comes from daily commitment repeated over time. When a person continues walking the long road with determination, the destination of mastery gradually becomes reality. Chapter 8. Discipline as the daily power. Discipline is one of the strongest forces that can shape a human life. It is the ability to act according to purpose, even when comfort or distraction appears. Many people misunderstand discipline. They believe discipline is a harsh punishment or a life without joy. But true discipline is not about suffering. It is about control, direction, and freedom. When a person lacks discipline, weak habits easily take control. Time disappears without progress. Goals remain dreams instead of becoming. But when discipline becomes part of daily life, the mind gains power. A disciplined mind does not wait for motivation. It understands that action must continue even when motivation is low. Motivation is like a wave. Sometimes it rises and brings energy. Sometimes it disappears and leaves the mind quiet. If a person depends only on motivation, progress becomes inconsistent. Discipline creates stability. Consider the example of a young writer named Hamza. Hamza dreamed of writing a book. He loved ideas and enjoyed imagining powerful stories. But for many months, he only talked about writing. He waited for the perfect moment and the perfect inspiration. Some days he felt excited and wrote a few pages. Other days, he wrote nothing. Because his writing depended on motivation, his progress remained slow. One day he changed his approach. Instead of waiting for inspiration, he created a daily rule. Every morning he would write for 1 hour. The rule did not depend on mood or emotion. Some mornings he felt creative. Other mornings his ideas felt slow. But he continued writing. After several weeks, something surprising happened. His creativity improved. Because he wrote every day, the mind became trained for expression. Ideas appeared more easily and his confidence grew. Within several months, he completed a large part of his book. This progress happened because discipline replaced waiting. Another example can be seen in the life of a young athlete named Bilal. Bilal wanted to become physically strong and healthy. In the beginning, he exercised only when he felt energetic. Some weeks, he trained often. Other weeks, he skipped training completely. His results remained inconsistent. Later, he created a structured training schedule. He trained at the same time each day. Even when he felt tired, he completed a shorter session instead of skipping entirely. Gradually, his body adapted to the routine. Strength, endurance, and confidence increased. This transformation did not happen because of temporary motivation. It happened because discipline became a daily habit. Discipline also protects the mind from distraction. The modern world is full of interruptions. Phones, messages, entertainment, and endless information compete for attention. Without discipline, it becomes easy to lose hours of valuable time. A disciplined person learns to create boundaries. For example, a student preparing for exams may decide to keep the phone away during study sessions. At first, the mind may feel uncomfortable. The brain has been trained to check the phone frequently. But after several days, the mind becomes calmer. Concentration improves, and learning becomes deeper. This simple act of discipline strengthens the ability to focus. Another important benefit of discipline is reliability. A disciplined person becomes someone others can trust. When a disciplined individual promises to complete a task, the task is completed. When a commitment is made, the commitment is respected. This reliability builds strong relationships and professional respect. People naturally value individuals who keep their word. Discipline also builds self-respect. Each time a person follows a plan or keeps a promise, the mind receives a positive message. The message says, "I can trust myself." This inner trust becomes a powerful source of confidence. Many people struggle with self-doubt because they repeatedly break their own promises. They plan to study, but delay. They plan to exercise, but avoid effort. Over time, the mind begins to question its own reliability. Discipline repairs this problem. By keeping small promises daily, a person rebuilds self-trust. Another important part of discipline is learning to prioritize. Not every task has equal importance. A disciplined mind focuses on actions that create long-term value. For example, a student may choose studying over endless entertainment. A professional may focus on meaningful work instead of unnecessary activities. Prioritization ensures that time and energy are invested wisely. Building discipline does not require sudden extreme changes. It begins with small, consistent actions. Waking at a planned time, completing daily responsibilities, practicing learning and improvement. These actions may appear simple, but they create powerful structure in life. Over time, discipline becomes easier because it becomes part of identity. The person begins to see the self as someone who follows plans and respects commitments. When this identity becomes strong, weak habits lose their influence. Another helpful method for strengthening discipline is planning the day. A clear plan reduces confusion and increases focus. When a person knows what tasks must be completed, the mind spends less energy deciding what to do next. Planning creates direction. Even if unexpected events appear, the plan helps the person return to productive action. Discipline also includes learning to manage energy. Rest, sleep, and healthy habits support strong discipline. A tired mind finds it difficult to concentrate and resist temptation. By caring for physical health, a person strengthens mental performance. This balance between effort and recovery allows discipline to remain sustainable. Over months and years, the power of discipline becomes visible. A disciplined student builds knowledge and confidence. A disciplined worker builds skill and professional success. A disciplined individual builds health stability and emotional strength. Weak habits disappear because they no longer receive attention or repetition. Instead, strong habits fill daily life with meaningful action. The person who once struggled with distraction and delay becomes someone who moves forward with purpose. Discipline, therefore, becomes a daily power. It guides actions when emotions are uncertain. It protects time from waste. It transforms small efforts into lasting achievements. When discipline becomes part of life, the mind becomes stronger, clearer, and more focused. And with this strength, the journey of killing weak habits becomes not only possible, but inevitable. Chapter 9. The power of consistency. Consistency is the secret force behind lasting change. It is the repeated application of effort over time. Without consistency, even the strongest motivation or best plans fail. Many people begin a new habit full of enthusiasm. They wake early for a week. They study intensively for a few days. They exercise energetically for a short period. But when life becomes busy or motivation fades, the effort disappears. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Small actions repeated daily create more lasting results than occasional bursts of extreme effort. Consider the example of a student named Sarah. Sarah wanted to improve her mathematics skills. At first, she studied for 3 hours every weekend. During weekdays, she did very little. After a few weeks, she noticed minimal improvement. Her occasional intensity was not enough. Later, she tried a different approach. She decided to study only 30 minutes every day. The time was short and manageable. Even on busy days, she could complete it. After several months, the results were remarkable. Her understanding grew steadily. Problems that seemed difficult before became manageable. The reason was consistency. Small repeated actions train the brain. They create mental patterns that become automatic. Consistency also builds confidence. Each completed action is proof that the person can follow through. Even if progress is slow, the mind begins to trust itself. Another example can be seen in the life of a young professional named Bilal. Bilal wanted to improve his writing skills. He decided at first he only wrote a paragraph or two. Sometimes he felt uninspired. Sometimes he wanted to skip. But he continued consistently. Over months his writing improved dramatically. Ideas became clearer. Vocabulary expanded. Confidence increased. The daily repetition created skill and identity. Consistency works because habits are formed through repetition. The brain adapts to repeated patterns. When actions repeat frequently, they become easier and eventually automatic. The person no longer needs to rely on willpower alone. Consistency also teaches patience. Many people expect quick results. They feel frustrated when improvement is slow. But consistency reminds the mind that meaningful change takes time. It trains the individual to value process over immediate reward. Small victories accumulate into significant achievements. Consistency also protects against setbacks. Occasional mistakes are natural. A person may miss a day or face a challenging moment. But if the overall pattern remains consistent, progress continues. The key is to return to the habit immediately, not to give up after one failure. Another important aspect of consistency is simplicity. The simpler the habit, the easier it is to repeat daily. Complex plans often fail because the mind struggles to follow them consistently. For example, a student may fail to study 5 hours each day, but studying 15 minutes daily is achievable. Small daily actions repeated consistently are the foundation of mastery. Consistency also strengthens identity. Each repeated action sends a message to the mind. I am a person who acts. I am a person who completes tasks. I am a person who values growth. These messages gradually transform the self-image. Habits align naturally with the identity. Even when motivation is low or life is challenging, the educated mind continues. Consistency builds momentum. Momentum reduces resistance. It makes actions easier. It encourages further effort. For example, a writer who writes daily finds ideas flow more easily. A learner who studies daily retains information better. An athlete who trains daily experiences gradual strength and endurance. Consistency also amplifies the effect of discipline and focus. Discipline helps begin the action. Consistency ensures the action repeats until it becomes automatic. Focus directs energy efficiently toward meaningful tasks. When all three combine, the mind becomes unstoppable. The journey to kill weak habits depends heavily on consistency. Without it, temporary effort may produce small results. With it, small efforts compound into lasting transformation. A consistent person slowly replaces weak habits with strong ones. Daily routines become predictable patterns of growth. Distractions lose their power because the mind has practiced focus repeatedly. It is about persistence. It is about returning to positive action again and again. Even small daily actions matter more than occasional dramatic effort. Over months and years, consistency shapes the mind, body, and life. It creates discipline, resilience, and strong identity. It turns ordinary effort into extraordinary results. The person who consistently practices positive habits becomes someone naturally resistant to weak habits. The mind learns that growth is normal and weakness is temporary. In this way, consistency becomes the backbone of personal mastery and long-term success. Chapter 10. The role of patience in mind transformation. Patience is the quiet power that supports every effort to kill weak habits and build a stronger mind. Many people begin the journey of self-improvement with energy and excitement. They want rapid results. They expect immediate change. When progress feels slow or difficult, sometimes they give up entirely. The problem is that the mind does not transform overnight. Habits that were built over years cannot disappear in a few days. Patience allows the mind to work steadily. It teaches the person to respect the process. It reminds the individual that lasting change grows slowly, like a tree strengthening its roots. Consider the example of a young professional named Zara. Zara wanted to improve her focus at work. She started using a structured daily schedule. At first, she completed only part of her tasks. Some days, distractions still took over. Instead of feeling defeated, she practiced patience. She reminded herself that each day was a step toward improvement. Over several months, her ability to concentrate increased. Distractions became easier to manage. Her productivity improved steadily. This story shows that patience is not passive waiting. It is active persistence. It is trusting that small repeated efforts compound into meaningful change. Patience also helps during setbacks. Mistakes and failures are inevitable. A weak habit may reappear temporarily. A planned routine may be interrupted. Without patience, the mind interprets these moments as total failure. With patience, the mind sees them as opportunities to learn. For example, a student preparing for exams may experience days when studying feels difficult. Instead of giving up entirely, the patient student observes what went wrong. Perhaps focus was low. Perhaps fatigue or stress interfered. The next day, the student returns to the study routine. Each patient return strengthens the mind. Another important aspect of patience is the ability to handle slow progress. Many people compare themselves to others. They see peers achieving results faster. This comparison creates frustration and self-doubt. A patient mind understands that growth is individual. Progress cannot be measured only by external results. Daily effort, repeated over time, creates internal strength that eventually produces lasting achievement. Patience also nurtures resilience. The mind learns to continue moving forward, even when results are not immediate. This resilience protects the person from giving up in the face of obstacles. Consider a young athlete named Omar. He wanted to improve his physical endurance. At first, running felt exhausting. He could barely complete short distances. Progress seemed minimal. Instead of quitting, Omar remained patient. He ran a little farther each day. He repeated the routine consistently. After several months, his endurance improved significantly. His strength and confidence grew steadily. This gradual process demonstrates that patience multiplies the value of consistent effort. It allows the mind to absorb lessons from repeated practice. Patience also supports identity building. A strong-minded person does not demand instant perfection. They understand that every small action reinforces the self-image of discipline, focus, and resilience. When a person becomes patient, the pressure to achieve overnight disappears. Instead, the journey itself becomes valuable. Each step, no matter how small, contributes to the transformation of habits and character. Finally, patience helps maintain balance. Without patience, a person may attempt extreme routines that lead to burnout. With patience, the mind learns sustainable effort. Small victories accumulate. Energy remains consistent. Growth continues steadily. In conclusion, patience is the companion of consistency, discipline, and focus. It allows the mind to transform gradually without frustration. It provides strength to overcome setbacks. It teaches the value of steady effort over quick results. The person who cultivates patience experiences deep and lasting change. Weak habits lose power not because they are forced away, but because the mind has been trained steadily over time. With patience, daily effort becomes a natural rhythm, and the journey toward mastery becomes achievable, sustainable, and deeply rewarding conclusion. The journey toward a strong mind. Educating the mind to kill weak habits is not a one-time effort. It is a continuous journey of awareness, discipline, patience, and consistent action. Every person has the power to reshape thoughts, habits, and ultimately life. Weak habits appear small and harmless at first. A few minutes of delay, a little distraction, a minor act of laziness. But repeated over time, they quietly build chains that control the mind and limit potential. The first step in breaking these chains is awareness. Observing daily behavior honestly without excuses. Understanding the triggers, environments, and emotions that sustain weak habits. This awareness allows the mind to see its own patterns clearly. Once awareness exists, the process of education begins. The mind can be trained to prioritize effort over comfort, focus over distraction, and growth over stagnation. Daily habits, even small ones, repeated consistently, reshape the brain and reinforce positive identity. Replacing weak habits with strong ones is essential. Instead of leaving a gap, the mind is given new patterns that support goals and values. Small, consistent actions, tied to routine and reinforced by environment, eventually become automatic. Identity is the foundation of transformation. Believing I am disciplined, I am focused, I am capable changes the internal narrative. The brain begins to act according to this identity, aligning habits with the self-image. Over time, weak habits lose their power because they no longer match the story the mind believes about itself. Discipline, patience, and consistency are the pillars of lasting change. Discipline guides action when motivation is low. Consistency compounds small daily efforts into significant results. Patience allows the mind to absorb lessons gradually, tolerate setbacks, and sustain effort over time. Challenges, discomfort, and temporary failures are not obstacles. They are essential tools in strengthening the mind. Facing them with controlled effort teaches resilience, endurance, and self-control. The journey is not about perfection, but about persistent progress. Ultimately, educating the mind transforms life. A trained mind chooses actions that create success, health, growth, and fulfillment. A person who masters this process becomes the architect of their own destiny. Weak habits no longer control decisions. Distraction loses its charm. Procrastination fades. The mind becomes clear, strong, and focused. Every day is an opportunity to reinforce strength. Every small action builds evidence of a disciplined and capable identity. Every challenge faced with determination strengthens the mind. The path is gradual but powerful. It begins with a single choice to take control of thoughts, habits, and actions. It continues with repeated effort, consistent practice, and patient persistence. By educating the mind, the individual transforms weakness into strength, confusion into clarity, and potential into achievement. The journey never truly ends, because the mind can always grow stronger. But each step on this journey brings the person closer to freedom from weak habits and closer to the life they aspire to live. The mind, once trained, becomes the greatest tool a person can possess. It empowers daily action, shapes character, and directs life with intention. In the end, the individual realizes the truth. The power to change life resides within. The person who educates the mind kills weak habits and builds a future defined by strength, focus, and limitless possibility. The end.
Kindly subscribe to my channel.